The afternoon sun burned bright over the University of Lagos, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer. Tomowa Adeyemi, 23, could barely feel it. Her heart was pounding too loudly. She was finally graduating with a degree in engineering. 4 years of sleepless nights, group projects, and exams that felt endless. As her name was called, she walked proudly across the stage, gripping her degree like it was her ticket to freedom. From the podium, she scanned the crowd. Families were shouting, waving, crying. Mothers held up phones to record every second. Fathers clapped so hard their hands turned red. But in the middle of all that noise, one chair sat empty, her father's. He promised he'd come. He'd told her, "You'll see me right in front," cheering the loudest. But now the seat he was supposed to fill looked like a hole in her joy. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. He said he was too busy. Tomowa smiled for the cameras anyway, pretending everything was fine. But later, back in her small hostel room, the silence hit hard. Her friends were out celebrating with their families. Laughter echoed down the hall. She sat alone, staring at the half-melted graduation cake on her table. Her father didn't call, not even a text. She cut herself a small slice, the icing too sweet, and whispered to the empty room. "One day, I'll make him regret missing this moment." It wasn't anger, it was a promise. 2 weeks after graduation, life finally started to look good for Tomowa. She had just landed her first real job, a junior engineering position at a firm in Ikeja. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. She rented a small apartment close to work and spent her evenings imagining how she'd grow, save, maybe even buy her mother a car one day. Then, out of nowhere, her phone rang one evening. The name flashing on the screen made her freeze. Dad. She hadn't heard from him since graduation. For a moment, her heart softened. Maybe he was finally calling to say he was proud of her. She picked up quickly. "Hello, Daddy." His voice was unusually cheerful. "Ah, my brilliant daughter. I heard about your new job. I'm proud of you, my dear." Tomowa smiled, feeling that small warmth she hadn't felt in a while. "Thank you, sir." He cleared his throat. "Listen, I actually need a small favor from you." Her stomach tightened. "What kind of favor?" "I have a business deal, an urgent one. I just need you to send me 2 million Nigerian nairas. I'll pay you back soon." She blinked. 2 million. Her voice trembled a bit. "Daddy, I just started working. I don't even have that kind of money." There was silence. Then his tone changed, sharp, angry. "So after everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? You can't help your own father?" "Daddy, I swear, I don't have it," she said softly. He scoffed so loudly she could almost see his sneer. "Ungrateful child. You and that useless mother of yours are the same. Always giving excuses." Before she could respond, the line went dead. Tomowa sat frozen, phone still pressed to her ear. The happiness she'd felt minutes earlier dissolved into a heavy ache. She tried calling back, but he didn't answer. That night, she lay awake wondering how love could turn into cruelty so fast. The next morning, her phone buzzed again, a series of voice notes from her father. She hesitated before pressing play. His voice was filled with venom. "You think you've made it? You're nothing without me," he shouted in one message. In another, he said, "You'll regret disrespecting you and that failure of a mother." Tomowa sat there in shock. Each word hit like a slap. The man who should have been her biggest supporter now sounded like her worst enemy. She didn't reply. She couldn't. Instead, she stared at her office ID card lying on the table. It had her name printed neatly, ENGR. Tomowa Adeyemi. She touched it and whispered to herself, "I worked for this. Not him. Me." But deep down, she felt something shift, the painful beginning of realizing that sometimes family can break your heart worse than strangers ever could. The days after her father's outburst felt heavy. Tomowa tried to focus on her new job, diving into projects and pretending everything was fine. But inside, she was breaking. Every night, she'd stare at her phone, half expecting another round of insults, half hoping he might apologize. Neither came. Then the whispers started. Her cousin Bimp stopped replying to her texts. Aunt Funk, who used to send her prayers every Sunday, suddenly called one morning sounding tense. "Tomowa, what's going on between you and your father?" "Nothing, Auntie. We just had a disagreement." "A disagreement?" her aunt snapped. "He said you stole his business money, that you took 2 million naira and refused to pay back." Tomowa froze. "What? That's not true." Aunt Funk sighed. "I don't know what to believe, but you should apologize. You know how he is. He's your father. Just say sorry before things get worse." Tomowa ended the call feeling sick. Her father hadn't just insulted her, he was ruining her name. Within days, more relatives began calling, all saying the same thing. "Apologize to your father." No one asked for her side of the story. At work, she forced herself to smile, hiding her pain behind polite greetings and quiet focus. But during lunch breaks, she'd scroll through her messages, seeing the rumors spread through family group chats. Her chest tightened with every lie. One night, She returned home late after finishing a report. The hallway lights flickered, and as she reached her door, 2 policemen stepped out of the shadows. "Good evening, Miss Adeyemi," one of them said. "You are under investigation for theft." For a second, she thought it was a prank. "What?" she laughed nervously. "Theft? What theft?" They handed her a folded document. Her hands shook as she opened it. The name written on the report made her knees weak. Complainant, Chief Adeyemi A. Her father. Her voice came out in a whisper. "He filed this." "Yes, ma'am," one of the officers said. "We just need you to come with us to clear things up." Tomoa felt the world tilt. Neighbors peeked through their windows as the officers led her out. Some whispered, others took photos. Shame burned through her chest. At the station, she sat in a cold room staring at the report again. Every word was a lie. Fake signatures, false statements, fabricated transfers. It read like a script from a bad movie, except this one was her life. By the time she got home, her body was numb. She sat on the floor and whispered to herself, "He didn't come for my graduation, but he came for my destruction." That night, she stopped crying. Something in her heart hardened. She realized this wasn't just about family anymore. It was about survival. The policeman didn't shout or handcuff her, but the humiliation cut just as deep. As they walked Tomoa out of her apartment, doors creaked open. Curious faces appeared in the hallway, neighbors whispering, pretending to be shocked but clearly enjoying the drama. Someone muttered, "Ah, that engineering girl? I knew she was too proud." Tomoa kept her head down. Her throat burned with shame. She wanted to explain, to scream that she was innocent, but what was the point? People believed the loudest voice, and her father had already made sure his was echoing everywhere. At the police station, the smell of sweat and old papers filled the small office. The officer behind the desk barely looked up as he flipped through the file. "So, you're the one who stole from your father?" he said, more as an accusation than a question. "I didn't steal anything," Tomoa said quietly. He shrugged. "Then you'll need to prove it." Hours dragged by. She sat on a metal bench, phone clutched in her hand, wondering who she could call. Her mother didn't have the money for bail, and most of her relatives already thought she was guilty. When she finally gathered the courage to call her boss, she half expected him to fire her on the spot. But 2 hours later, Engineer Femi walked into the station, looking serious but calm. "I'm here for my staff," he said firmly. After a short discussion, he paid the bail, signed a few papers, and helped her outside. In the parking lot, he turned to her. "You'll be okay, Tomoa," he said softly. "Don't let this break you." She nodded, but his eyes told her the truth. He didn't believe she was okay. He pitied her. When she finally reached home that night, exhaustion hit her all at once. She dropped her bag on the floor and sat on her bed, staring blankly at the wall. Her degree hung neatly in a frame above her desk, the same one she'd been so proud of just weeks ago. Her eyes filled with tears. "You didn't even show up for this," she whispered, voice cracking. "But you showed up to destroy me." She pulled her knees close to her chest and sobbed quietly. All the anger, all the confusion, poured out until there was nothing left but silence. Later, she opened her phone again and reread the report. Her father had accused her of stealing money from a joint family business account, an account she had never even known existed. He'd forged documents, twisted facts, and made her look like a criminal. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning. How could a father go this far to hurt his own child? By morning, her eyes were swollen, but something in her heart shifted. The sadness was still there, but beneath it, a quiet fire was starting to grow. Tomoa could barely concentrate at work. Every time she looked at her computer screen, her father's accusations echoed in her mind. People at the office had started whispering too. She saw the way some of them looked at her, like she was a thief who somehow got lucky enough to still have her job. One afternoon, her colleague and closest friend, Saad, found her sitting alone in the break room, staring into her cup of tea. "You can't let this continue," Saad said firmly. "He's lying about you, Tommy. You need help, real help." Tomoa sighed. "What can I even do? He's my father. Nobody will believe me over him." Saad leaned forward. "Then we'll make them believe you. I know a young lawyer, Barrister Naji. He's smart, hungry, and not afraid of powerful people. Let's go see him." By the weekend, they were sitting in a small but tidy office in Yacht. The lawyer, barely in his early 30s, listened carefully as Tomoa explained everything. The money, the police, the lies. He didn't interrupt once. When she finished, he nodded slowly and said, "We'll start with the bank records for that joint account. If your name is really on it, we'll find out how." The next few days felt like a blur of forms, phone calls, and sleepless nights. Tomoa checked her phone constantly, waiting for updates. Then one morning, her phone buzzed. It was Barrister Naji. "Miss Adeyemi," he said, excitement in his voice. "You need to come to the office. We found something." When she arrived, he spread a few printed documents across his desk. "Look here," he said, pointing to one line. "Your signature on this withdrawal form. It's fake." and the money was transferred directly to your father's company account, not yours. Tomoa stared at the paper, her hands shaking. So he forged my signature? Yes, the lawyer said. And from what I can tell, he moved the funds to cover losses from his failed project. When it collapsed, he blamed you. She sat back in shock, a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief rushing through her chest. For years, she had tried to make him proud. All those nights studying, all those calls he ignored. And all along, he had been the one destroying her. Her voice trembled, but her words came out clear. He skipped my graduation because he was too busy being a fraud. Saad squeezed her hand gently, tears in her eyes. Barrister Naji smiled faintly, pushing the documents toward her. Now, Miss Adeyemi, he said, it's time to show him what real education looks like. Tomoa looked down at the evidence, solid proof that her father had betrayed her. For the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of hope. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of her fight. Tomoa didn't sleep that night. The evidence sat on her table, pages that proved everything. Her father had forged her signature, stolen the money, and then destroyed her name to cover his tracks. She stared at the papers until sunrise, her anger boiling like fire. By morning, she knew what she had to do. She dressed neatly for work, but instead of going to the office, she took a bus straight to Lekki. Her father's company towered above the street, glass walls shining in the sun, a building built on lies. When she walked into the lobby, the receptionist froze. Good morning, Ma. Are you here to see Chief Adeyemi? Tomoa nodded, her voice steady. Yes. Tell him his daughter is here. Minutes later, she stepped into his office. Chief Adeyemi looked up from his desk, clearly surprised to see her. His suit was sharp, his expression proud, but his eyes narrowed when he saw the envelope in her hand. What are you doing here? He asked coldly. Tomoa slammed the papers on his desk. You framed your own daughter? He leaned back in his chair, smirking. Watch your tone, young lady. Remember who you're talking to. I made you who you are. She laughed bitterly. No, you didn't. I made myself. Every late night, every exam, every job interview, that was me. You weren't there. Not once. He tried to stand up, his voice rising. You think you can walk into my office and talk to me like this? Tomoa took a deep breath and looked him dead in the eye. You forged my name. You lied to the police. You dragged me through the mud. And you think I'll stay quiet? He grabbed the papers and skimmed them quickly. For the first time, she saw fear flicker in his eyes. Where did you get these? From someone who actually believes in justice, she said. He motioned to his security guards. Get her out of here. The guards moved closer, but Tomoa didn't flinch. She picked up her bag, straightened her blazer, and walked toward the door calmly. At the entrance, she turned back and said quietly, By the time this week ends, everyone will know who you really are. Then she walked out. No shouting, no tears, just purpose. Outside, the air felt lighter. She took out her phone and called Barrister Naji. I'm done hiding, she said. We're going to the FCC. That afternoon, she and her lawyer walked into the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission office and submitted the evidence. The officers listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. As Tomoa signed the final statement, she felt something shift inside her. Not revenge, but freedom. Her father had always used his power to silence others. Now, it was her turn to speak. The news broke faster than Tomoa expected. Just 3 days after she and her lawyer submitted the evidence, the FCC officially opened an investigation. Chief Adeyemi, respected businessman, community donor, and self-proclaimed family man, was suddenly the subject of every headline. Prominent businessman under investigation for fraud, daughter files complaint. The story spread like wildfire. Social media buzzed with shock and gossip. People reposted photos of him at award ceremonies and charity events, now captioned with words like scammer and fraud. Tomoa watched it all unfold quietly from her small apartment. For once, the silence around her didn't feel heavy. It felt powerful. Her father's empire was cracking, and she hadn't even lifted a finger beyond the truth. At work, her boss, Engineer Femi, called her into his office. I saw the news, he said gently. You've been through a lot, but I'm proud of how you handled yourself. You didn't hide. Tomoa smiled faintly. Thank you, sir. I just wanted the truth out. Meanwhile, her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Aunt Funk called, her voice shaky. Tomoa, we just saw the news. Is it true the FCC froze his accounts? Yes, Ani. It's true. There was a long pause before she whispered. I didn't know it was this serious. Please, don't let this destroy the family. Tomoa almost laughed. He already did that when he tried to destroy me. Then came the calls from cousins, uncles, even her father's old business partners. Everyone suddenly pretending to check on. The same people who had mocked her weeks ago were now speaking softly, choosing their words like they were walking on glass. That evening, her phone rang again, this time from a block number. Her gut told her who it was before she even picked up. Tomoa, her father's voice thundered through the line. You've ruined me. Do you know what you've done? My accounts are frozen. My name is everywhere. My partners are leaving me. She sat quietly for a moment, letting him shout. Then she said calmly, "No, Daddy. I didn't ruin you." "What do you mean?" he barked. Her voice didn't shake. "You ruined yourself the day you called the police on your own blood." There was silence on the other end, heavy, suffocating silence. Then the line went dead. Tomowa stared at her phone for a while, her heart racing, but she didn't cry. Not this time. That night, she walked to her balcony and looked out over the city lights. The same man who once made her feel small was now being forced to face the truth. For the first time in years, she felt in control, not out of revenge, but out of strength. The tables had turned, and Tomowa wasn't the broken daughter anymore. She was the one standing tall while her father's lies came crashing down around him. Months passed, and the storm finally reached its peak. The FCC investigation dragged on for weeks, uncovering layer after layer of fraud tied to Chief Adeyemi's company. Each hearing brought new evidence: forged documents, fake signatures, and secret transfers. What had once been whispers turned into headlines across the country. Tomowa didn't attend every court session, but when she did, she sat quietly behind her lawyer, calm but alert. Her father avoided looking at her. The confident man who once walked with his chest high now looked smaller, defeated, like the weight of his own lies had finally crushed him. After nearly 6 months, the final verdict came. The courtroom was packed, journalists, relatives, and curious strangers all waiting to hear the outcome. The judge's voice was steady as he read the decision. Chief Adeyemi was found guilty of financial misconduct. His assets would be seized, and he was ordered to pay restitution for the stolen funds. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then cameras started flashing. Tomowa didn't smile or cheer. She simply exhaled, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in months. It wasn't joy she felt, it was peace. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, shouting questions. "Miss Adeyemi, how do you feel about your father's conviction? Do you plan to forgive him?" Tomowa just gave a small, polite smile. "The truth always finds its way out," she said softly, before walking away. Waiting by the car was her mother, holding back tears. As soon as Tomowa reached her, she pulled her into a tight hug. Neither of them spoke for a while. Then her mother whispered against her ear, "You've freed us both." Those words sank deep. It wasn't just about the money or the case. It was about breaking a cycle. For years, they had lived under the shadow of a man who used power like a weapon. Now they were finally free to breathe, to live without fear. That night, sitting in her apartment, Tomowa stared at her old degree on the wall. It reminded her of the girl who once sat alone after graduation, crying over an empty seat. That girl had no idea how strong she would become. With her savings and a few donations from friends and supporters, Tomowa decided to start something new, the Daughters Rise Fund. It would help young women stand up against family exploitation, giving them legal and emotional support when the people meant to protect them became their oppressors. She built a small website, reached out to lawyers and counselors, and slowly her idea grew. Messages started pouring in, women from different states sharing their stories, thanking her for giving them hope. For the first time in years, Tomowa smiled without pain. Her father's downfall wasn't her victory, her strength was. She had turned her deepest wound into something powerful, something that could heal others. The rain had been falling nonstop that afternoon, the kind that made Lagos streets shine like mirrors. Tomowa sat in her small office, going through reports for her NGO when her phone rang. The number on the screen was unfamiliar. She almost ignored it, but something told her to pick up. "Good afternoon, Ma," a calm voice said. "This is from the prison visitor's office. Chief Adeyemi has requested to see you." For a moment, she couldn't breathe. It had been nearly a year since his conviction. She hadn't spoken to him once. She thought she was done with the pain, done with the memories, done with him. "Do I have to come?" she asked softly. "No, Ma. It's your choice." She hesitated, then whispered, "I'll come tomorrow." The next day, the sky was still gray and heavy with rain. She took a cab to the prison, her heart oddly calm. As the officer led her to the visitor's room, she caught herself wondering what she would even say. Part of her wanted to turn back, but another part, the part that needed closure, kept her moving forward. When she entered the small, cold room, she almost didn't recognize him. Chief Adeyemi sat across the table, wearing a faded prison uniform. His once proud shoulders were hunched, his face lined with wrinkles she had never noticed before. The man who used to command attention with his presence now looked tired. "Tomowa," he said, his voice weak but familiar. "You came." She sat down quietly. "I did." There was a long pause. Then he spoke again, slower this time. "I've had a lot of time to think. I was wrong about everything. About you. About your mother." His eyes glistened as he looked at her. "I let pride destroy what mattered most." Tomowa listened, her face calm. The words she had dreamed of hearing years ago now sounded empty. The apology came too late, Not because she still hated him, but because she no longer needed his approval. When he finally said, "I'm sorry," she nodded once. "I forgive you," she said quietly, "but I'll never forget." He closed his eyes as if her words carried both pain and peace. They sat in silence for a few minutes before the guard signaled that her time was up. She stood, picked up her umbrella, and looked at him one last time. "Take care of yourself, Daddy," she said softly. As she stepped outside, the rain had started again, gentle, almost cleansing. She walked slowly to the gate, breathing in the cool air. For the first time in years, her chest felt light. Not because he had apologized, but because she finally understood something deeper. She didn't need his love or approval to heal. She had already forgiven him the moment she stopped needing him to change. 5 years later, Tomoa stood on a small stage decorated with soft lights and banners that read, "The Daughters Rise Fund, First Annual Scholarship Event." The hall buzzed with excitement. Young women filled the seats, some nervous, some smiling, all full of hope. Tomoa looked graceful in a simple blue dress, her natural hair tied neatly back. As she stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. She smiled, a real smile this time, the kind that came from peace, not performance. She began softly. "When I started this journey, I didn't plan to be here. I just wanted to survive. But along the way, I learned that sometimes the people who break you are also the ones who build your strength without knowing it." The crowd listened closely, every eye on her. She took a deep breath and continued, her voice steady but full of emotion. "They told me family should lift you up. Mine tried to break me instead. But sometimes," she paused, smiling a little, "betrayal is just the wind that pushes your wings open." The audience erupted in applause, a long, heartfelt one. Some people stood, others wiped away tears. Cameras flashed as she stepped back from the microphone, her heart swelling with gratitude. On the wall beside the stage hung a framed photo from her graduation day, the one where her father's seat had been empty. Tomoa glanced at it and felt no pain this time, only pride. She had spent years waiting for someone to fill that empty space in her life, but now she understood. She had done it herself. As the applause faded, she smiled again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I filled the empty seat.